Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video, I'm going to be showing a complete run from start to finish with the final boss for Elden Ring Nightreign. Throughout this video, I'm going to be dropping in my opinions, thoughts, and at the end, even reviewing the playtest, how I felt about it. Overall, so far though, I gotta say, this game is fantastic. I had an absolute blast with it. I didn't jump in on the first test. I heard the servers weren't too good for the first one. I did get in 3 sessions in total, about 8 hours of playtime, and across my 8 hours of playtime, it really was a great time. I'm going to talk about some things throughout the video though, because I feel like Elden Ring Nightreign does need a little bit more. There's definitely some things they can add to the game to make it more interesting. But throughout this video, before we jump in, I just want to say, I'm not going to voice over the entire thing. I'm just going to voice over parts and do a little bit of a review at the end. We'll be showing the final boss as well. So as we jump into this run, I want to mention most runs, if you do complete them, are between 30 and 45 minutes. I picked the Duchess class here. I like her a lot. Her special ability allows all of you to go invisible for a short time, which can be really convenient if people need to heal up or if you need to revive a teammate. Couple tips to remember when the game releases. The churches are going to allow you to increase your flask, much like the original Elden Ring, so you want to make sure you visit the churches in the game. And another thing to mention too is a lot of the weapons are random with random ashes of war. You're going to want to look for something that fits your character and your abilities. Pay attention to how much stamina, health, etc. you have, and try to play your character, whatever one you pick, to the best of your ability, because that's going to help your team a lot. As you can see here, we're going to start by flying into the map, much like a Battle Royale, except this is PvE, not PvP. A lot of people have called it a roguelike. That's very fitting. The concept here is to level up as fast as you can, take on as many bosses as you can, because that's going to give you a lot of runes, get stronger, and make sure you're ready specifically for the end of day 2, basically day 2 night. There's day 1, and then night 1, and then day 2, and then night 2, and then there's the final boss. Night 2 and the final boss can be pretty challenging, so you're going to want to make sure you're at a high level, a decent level by then, around like between 12 or 15 or so, because it is really challenging. It's going to level up your health, your FP, and your stamina every time you level up at a grace. Graces automatically fill back everything up too, so you just have to go near one and everything fills back up. That's how you recharge. Let's jump right in. Follow me through this run. I'll be dropping in and out of this one. I hope you guys enjoy this. If you haven't seen a complete run of Nightreign, here is Elden Ring Nightreign complete run from start to finish. So I engaged this boss a little bit too early. I should have leveled up once or twice prior to taking on this boss, and there was a little bit of a fault I made there, but I was learning as I went along. Bosses are hugely important in Nightreign. They're seemingly the most important thing really that you can do because they give you a ton of runes to level up. Luckily, my teammates came to help, and we ended up being able to take down this first boss. If you're playing with randoms, and I was, make sure you mark stuff on the map unless somebody else is marking things on the map. Generally, you're going to want to close in, get closer to the inner circle because it's easier. And then eventually there's going to be a point. It's going to be an urge tree that you're going to have to go to, and that's going to be the safe spot where basically you're going to have to fight a boss in order to get to the next day. The map will show you where to go, and much like any other battle royale, I'm not saying it's a battle royale in terms of the actual game because it's PvE, but it has the same circle kind of vibe, so you got to pay attention to the map at all times to where it closes in at. You don't want to get on the outside of the map because then you're going to lose HP, and you'll probably end up being behind your teammates, and they won't be able to revive you. So continue to push forward, follow the map, and mainly fight bosses, pick up as many items as you can, and avoid the lesser mobs. There's some decent mobs or mini bosses, go for them, but the lesser mobs, you don't have to go after all of them because bosses really are going to be where the runes come from, so you're going to focus primarily on that. Early on, you can go and take on some mobs for a little extra runes to get your first level or two, but after that, your focus should be bosses and basically bigger targets to get more runes. Also, pay attention to how much time you have. Here, the map was closing in a bit, but I figured we had enough time to take on this hippo boss and grab some extra runes. I figured that'd be hugely helpful to have those extra runes for levels. Plus, the hippo is relatively easy and weak to bleed since I have the hook claws, and the teammates here are obviously very helpful as well. They're both really powerful mages. Overall, this was definitely worth taking on prior to moving in with the circle. Pay attention to the map, see how much time you have, and if you think you could take something down, especially if you're cooperating together, then definitely take that down and then continue to move towards the final circle. Alright, now we're at the first night boss, and this boss isn't too bad. This is the Centipede Demon. He's a little bit difficult if you have a bleed build like myself. Overall, he's tanky, but he doesn't do a ton of damage, and he's relatively slow. He's got a lot of attacks that basically jump and hop around. If you can avoid some of those, you can get in a lot of damage because his attacks are relatively slow, and just try to stack as much as you can against him. You're going to need to take him on and beat him to get to the next day. And of course, when you beat bosses, you're going to get options for buffs. I like buffs that increase HP or FP. I like kind of building my character a little bit tanky, even for this class. It doesn't really fit this class necessarily, but having more health is always a good thing, and especially being able to restore health, since I was getting a lot of critical hits on regular enemies, that's a good one for me. I want to mention another thing. The special ability I didn't use there, I end up using it a couple times throughout. On PlayStation, it's going to be triangle and R2, or triangle and L2 is going to be the other one, your two special abilities. Don't forget about those. They're easy to forget control-wise. You're going to want to use those in certain situations, especially hers, which can make your teammates invisible and yourself, and again, can help with revival and can help with certain situations. If things turn bad, you can then use that special ability to kind of save yourselves and get a second chance. And we're jumping into day 2. We're going to follow the markers on the map, continue to follow my teammates, push forward. Day 2 is more difficult, and so is the night. And then after that, we have the final boss, which is relatively challenging as well. Let's jump right in again. And lucky for me, my teammates marked a church on the map that's going to give us more health flasks, which is going to be hugely helpful. We want to get those health flasks. They're going to be really important, especially for the final boss. And once again here, seeking out the boss. Always seeking out bosses to get more runes, especially bosses. If you remember some of these ones from the Elden Ring base game, you're going to be able to fight them. A lot of them have the same movesets. There's even a Gil in this as well. Several bosses definitely have the same exact movesets. There's a couple of change-ups. Ultimately, the Margit-type boss is a bit more challenging. But overall, if you had any feel for Elden Ring itself, and then you jump into Elden Ring Nightreign, you will have a little bit of an advantage there because their movesets are similar. Really love the pickup we had just there, where we get basically increased health from our flask. That's awesome. That's a really good one to have. Like I said, I'm big on buffs as far as the regular buffs that you can pick up and the buffs you can also add from defeating bosses and whatnot. I really like stacking those up. I feel like it's going to make my character stronger ultimately. There are some good weapon drops, don't get me wrong. But so far, I haven't really run into. I didn't get the opportunity to run into some of my favorite ones, and of course, the Blasphemous Blade I never saw throughout my 8 hours of play. I didn't run into the merchants too much. Like I didn't do too much with them. Their inventories were relatively similar. I did try out Bloodhound's Fang. That was pretty good. But ultimately, I kind of just picked up what I thought would be good for the round I was in with the teammates I had, and then I would continue from there. Here, after we take down this boss, I'm ultimately going to go for more stamina here because, again, I like the whole buff situation. Now, that Godskin Peeler actually wouldn't have been bad for my build, but the Hook Claws were working for me so far, so I increased maximum stamina, continue basically to add HP, add stamina, etc., and make sure I'm in decent shape for the second night and the final boss. Now, the final boss in this run doesn't go too well for me. I ended up playing it too aggressive, too fast. Ultimately was a little bit carried by my teammates. I'll get to that in a little bit. I want to mention one thing, though, about this, because I said I would talk about how I feel about the game so far. I think it's great. I do think it needs more filling in, though, especially with enemies and bosses, and I think we need more maps as well. If there's more to this game, this could very well be a 10 out of 10 game and probably the best roguelike I've ever played. Anything like this, really, essentially, that I've ever played. Because I loved Elden Ring, and now they're turning it into something that you can run with friends and have a good time in co-op, or even with randoms in this case, and have a great time too. Maybe throw on some headphones or whatever and play an awesome game. It's going to be a really good time killer and also a really fun game. Ultimately, though, I do think it needs a little bit more, even with the $40, $50 price tag. So far, though, very good impressions from the playtest. All right, now we're on to the second night. The second night is actually really challenging because the boss is going to show up. It's going to be Margit in this case, and that boss is going to be really difficult because his DPS is very high. He does a lot of damage to us, so we have to be really helpful there. First things first, though, we got to take down these two bigger omens. Once they're down, Margit, essentially, it's going to call him the Fell Omen. He's going to come in, and we're going to have to take him on. And unlike the regular Elden Ring game where I've beat him up so many times, he's much more challenging here. He's one of the bosses that definitely got buffed. He's faster, he does more damage, and he can also take a lot of hits too. Let's jump right into this boss fight. After night 2 ends, a portal will open up, and when that portal opens up, that's going to take you to the final boss. I'm assuming when it releases, there's going to be several final bosses. In this case, it's just the three-headed dog. Just want to say spoiler alert here because we're going into the final boss section now. And then, of course, towards the end of this, I'm going to talk about my final review of how I felt about the playtest. Although I think you guys have an impression of how I felt so far, it really was a great time. I'm going to go through that, talk a little bit about the final boss, and then talk more at the ending of the video, of course. All right, the final boss is on the way. This boss is really challenging in my opinion because he's got a lot of range. He has a chain that can hit you from far away. It ends up beating me up a couple times. I get bit a little bit here in terms of my HP. Basically, I end up kind of messing myself up by playing it too aggressively early on, losing too much HP, and then later my teammates have to get me when I'm down several times because I ran out of HP. One of the problems that you're going to run into this game where you kind of get locked, especially if you don't have things like warming stones or other things to heal you. If I didn't play it as aggressive, I think I would have done much better. This phase isn't too bad. He's eventually going to turn into 3 dogs, though. You're going to see that in a second, and it gets pretty crazy. Yeah, I had a really hard time focusing on the 3 dogs. They took a lot of my HP off. That phase for me is really difficult. Something I'm going to have to get used to when the game comes out. A lot of my skill, you know from my playstyle with regular Elden Ring, is more memorizing boss move sets as opposed to reaction times. My reaction times aren't the best, so I kind of have to memorize and learn stuff, which means I have to fight things multiple times. Since this ended up being the first time that I beat it, this is the first through run that I beat the final boss, that we beat the final boss, the 3 of us, I really hadn't learned the boss's moveset yet and had only faced him one other time and lost. So for me, I definitely need to learn a little bit before I get better. And of course, since I had no health flask at this point, I ended up being a lot less helpful for my teammates. Yeah, this here is going to be where I start to go down a lot, where we start to go down a lot, and this gets really close. I honestly didn't think we were going to end up beating the final boss and ended up really happy with the result. This team deserved it. They were really good. The other 2 players, in my opinion, were better than me. I definitely could have done a little bit better. I tried to do my part here at the end, but without health flasks and any ability to heal, it became really difficult. And this is where it got choppy, and definitely it was one of the situations where I was like, I don't think we're going to actually win this, but ultimately we ended up prevailing. This was an awesome boss fight, by the way. If there's more like this boss fight, I'm really looking forward to it. I gotta say, Elden Ring Nightreign was awesome. My impressions so far, it ended up being better than I expected. If they add more to it, I think it's going to be one of the best roguelikes ever made. The gameplay loop is highly addictive and incredibly fun. I think when the game releases too, I'll be able to come up with different rune combinations and different things you can do early to get yourself strong. I'm already thinking about different ways to get you OP fast and whatnot so that you can kind of run through it a little bit easier. And of course, I'll be working on that stuff come May when this game releases. This is an instant pre-order for me. It's not even a question. I had a ton of fun in my 8 hours of playing this game. Elden Ring Nightreign, without a doubt, for me, is worth a pickup. I'm not just saying that as an Elden Ring fan. This is an awesome game. If you can play it with friends or even randoms, I think you're going to have a great time. I'm looking forward to release, and I will catch you guys when I'm making Elden Ring Nightreign videos. See you soon.